Hi, I'm Katherine Einstein. I'm an associate professor of political science and an assistant director of research at the Center for Antiracist Research. And I'm going to talk to you today about the politics of racial data collection and how the choice to collect racial data is fundamentally a political one. So racial data collection is often voluntary, right? So it's left up largely in America to a fragmented set of state, county, and municipal governments. It is also not always collected at a unit of geography that is easy to use for local officials. This leaves us with racial data that is inconsistent by geographic region and by time period. And so I'm going to show you some evidence that helps to illuminate these important problems from data collection with the Racial Data Lab at the Center for Anti-Racist Research and the Menino Survey of Mayors from the Initiative on Cities. So starting with the Racial Data Lab, we've been really interested in understanding the collection of racial data across a whole series of different policy areas. And so here I'm going to show you some evidence of racial data collection from law enforcement agencies and from homelessness data. And so what we have here on the left-hand side, this is law enforcement data collection in year 2021. As reported to the Uniform Crime Reports at the federal level. And then on the right-hand side, this is racial data that has been collected from the 4 largest repositories of homelessness data that are reported to the federal level. So some common trends across both of these different types of data is they are voluntarily collected by local governments or county governments, and then they are reported to the federal level. And so what this means, if you look over at the policing data, right, you can see that there's a really wide range in the data reporting, that there are some places that report very little data and some places that report a lot. When we look over at the homelessness data, we can also see that there's lots of inconsistencies over time. We can see that there are some years for which we have lots of data and some years for which we have very little. And what this means is it makes it really hard for us to evaluate the efficacy of public policies when we don't even have consistent data over time on racial disparities in policing practices and in homelessness. We can also see this directly when we talk with public officials. So with the Initiative on Cities, we survey mayors of the largest cities in the country and mid-sized cities, so cities over 75,000. And we talked to over 125 mayors this year about their racial data collection challenges and practices. And one of the things that really stands out is that for a lot of policy areas, our local officials have very little racial data available, right? So with the exception of arrests, where over 75% of mayors collected data by race and ethnicity, we don't have consistent racial and ethnic data across our municipal governments. And in talking with the mayors, this creates significant problems. So data are critical in crisis decision-making, right? During the pandemic, here's one mayor who talked about some of his experiences in managing his small business crises. He found that he didn't have any data available on his small businesses in his community. And so what this meant is that he didn't know sort of where to target aid or how to help businesses that were in distress because he couldn't even really measure the problem. We also found in both our closed-ended and open-ended responses that federal standards are really important in driving local government decision-making. And this is also a theme that has emerged in a lot of the work that we're doing at the Center for Anti-Racist Research, that in the absence of clear federal standards about racial data, we end up with a complicated local government patchwork of inconsistent data that is often not usable. Finally, we also found significant intergovernmental communication challenges. And this quote really stood out to me and is emblematic of broader conflicts that we saw over the course of the pandemic between cities and counties. A lot of our public health data are collected at the county level. And counties are not always friends with their surrounding cities. They don't always get along really well. And so in this case, the mayor talked about how he didn't even know about racial disparities in vaccination rates in his own city because the county wouldn't share the data. And there are stories like this of city-county conflict hindering effective pandemic response across the country. So our fragmented local government system has created conditions that make it really hard for us to evaluate and implement anti-racist policies. Thank you.